Heute bist du überhaupt hier?
Statt so, dass ich in dem Wald bin. Ich trag dir die Rotznase noch so lang, bis es lebt wird.
Today's video will take you to a true supernatural case in Spain. A case so profoundly unsettling that it's even documented in government files. If you haven't heard of it before, then allow me to tell you the story. The first story revolves around a girl named Stephanie Lazaro, born in 1973. She lived with her parents and two younger siblings in the city of Vallecas, south of Madrid, Spain. Lazaro was the eldest, followed by a younger sister and a younger brother. It's unclear how old she was when her behavior began to change. From a kind and somewhat timid girl, Lazaro started emitting strange sounds and exhibiting bizarre behaviors, such as scratching her fingernails against walls and even attacking her younger brother. The family, especially her parents, grew fearful and worried about their daughter. They questioned her, but Lazaro herself didn't know why she was acting that way. She only knew that she often saw a dark shadow in the middle of the night, and each time she saw it, she felt compelled to perform those strange actions. And the most crucial issue was that Lazaro's health was deteriorating day by day. After some investigation, Lazaro's parents learned that their daughter had been reading books related to mystical spiritual phenomena, or even demons, and it was clear that these were the main cause of her psychological distress. However, even after they gathered and burned all those books, Lazaro's condition did not improve. They even invited a priest to their home, but he too could not help, and when Lazaro was taken to the hospital, doctors couldn't diagnose her illness. All her health indicators were normal, both physically and mentally, yet she continued to weaken day by day. So what on earth was happening to her? Lazaro remained hospitalized for several weeks. Her parents visited her regularly until one day she died in the hospital from an unknown cause. Doctors could not find the cause of death. According to the autopsy report, they could only provide a vague cause: cardiac arrest. Lazaro's family then processed her body and brought their daughter home for the funeral. Her funeral was conducted according to Catholic rites. After the funeral, overcome with grief and longing for their daughter, her parents kept her room exactly as it was when she was alive. Her mother simply tidied it up neatly and locked the door. For a few days, everything seemed fine. Then, one morning, her mother opened the room to clean the dust, and she was astonished to see the furniture thrown everywhere. Everything was in disarray. Nothing remained in its original state. At first, she thought it might be some mischievous neighborhood children climbing through the window to cause trouble. But a few days later, the exact same thing happened again, and it began to send shivers down her spine. Imagine, every day she would meticulously tidy and lock the room, only to open it the next morning and find everything in disarray, as if a storm had just swept through. Strange sounds also began to emanate from the room. Then voices, calls as if Lazaro was calling Mother, as she did when she was alive. And after each call, the room's air would turn icy cold, even though no wind blew in from the window. Her parents also noticed fresh claw marks on the walls, identical to those she made when her strange behaviors first began. The entire family became so terrified that they decided to seal off the room. However, every night, those sounds would resume, and the room door would automatically swing open. The haunting presence of Lazaro's spirit didn't just torment her family. Even the neighbors reported hearing those terrifying sounds. One morning, a teacher from Lazaro's old school, a nun, came to their house. She recounted that when Lazaro was alive, she had a close friend. Let's call her Friend A. Friend A had a boyfriend, but he had recently died in a horrific motorcycle accident, and Friend A was utterly devastated by it. One afternoon, Friend A Lazaro and two other girls were seen gathered around a Ouija board. Their purpose was to summon the spirit of Friend A's deceased boyfriend. The teacher witnessed a white mist rising from the Ouija board, directly entering Lazaro's body through her nose and mouth, as if she were being possessed. It turned out that the cause stemmed from Lazaro's recent research into books about demons. She had wanted to summon Friend A's boyfriend's spirit to talk, as a form of experimentation. This incident had taken place about 7 to 8 months prior, coinciding with the time Lazaro's strange behaviors began. So, her parents finally understood the reason behind their daughter's death. After speaking with the nun, the mother returned to her daughter's room and and found the picture of Christ on the wall hung upside down. Lazaro's memorial photo also fell to the floor. She picked it up, but it fell from her hand twice, and on the third time, it suddenly burst into flames. Realizing that a malevolent spirit resided in the room, Lazaro's parents called people to seal off the room with large wooden planks. They also stacked furniture against the door. However, every night, the chaos would resume. The door would be violently battered from the inside, as if something desperately wanted to escape. The family considered leaving the house, but their financial situation didn't allow it. They still had 2 younger children and couldn't let them sleep on the streets. Relatives and neighbors, terrified by the demonic stories, dared not offer any help. One night, the mother began to experience sleep paralysis. She recounted seeing a dark shadow squatting on her chest, choking her. When she awoke with a gasp, the entire family immediately called the police. Initially, the police didn't believe them. They suggested it might be hallucinations, fabrications, or trauma from their daughter's sudden passing. So, the police decided to send officers to stay overnight at their house, specifically in the youngest son's bed. And that's when the officers witnessed it firsthand, the youngest boy being violently tossed in the air like a rag doll, as if grabbed by his collar and thrown back and forth. Naturally, screams and agonizing groans began to fill the air. Inside Lazaro's room, all the pictures, including crucifixes, gradually began to turn upside down. The police documented all of this in their report, and the incident quickly captured the attention of the media. It was 1973, and this story captivated the public for a long time. The Lazaro family was eventually assisted in moving from their apartment at 8 Luis Harajan Street to another location, and after they moved, all supernatural phenomena within the house abruptly ceased. Many questioned whether it was all a hoax orchestrated by the family. However, no one could find a reason why this family would do such a thing. Thus, this case remains a mystery in Spain to this day, and it is one of the few cases documented in government files. There was a Spanish film released based on this case, Veronica, and if you're curious, you might want to check it out. Lately, the internet has been abuzz with news, posts, and stories about exorcisms in the spiritual realm. And to join the conversation, today I'm going to tell you about a truly terrifying case of demonic possession that very few people know about, with even less information available online. This story belongs to a woman named Pat Redding. Pat Redding was an ordinary woman living with her family in Fairfield, Connecticut, USA, in the 1982nd. She had a normal life until one day, Pat began to feel as though she was being watched in her own home. Then, objects started to be disturbed, overturned, and damaged. What's more, every time Pat woke up, she would find bruises on her wrists, like tight finger marks, and bite marks appearing on her back after just one night, caused by an unseen force. But Pat went to see a doctor and was diagnosed with no mental illness. Demonic possession was the final conclusion after dozens of inexplicable events. A total of 16 exorcisms were performed on Pat, but sadly, the demonic entities within her never left. During the exorcisms, they called out to the demonic spirits within Pat and communicated with them. This aspect is quite similar to the spiritual summoning in Eastern cultures. As for the conclusion of Pat Redding's story, after a long period of suffering, another entity invaded her body, and after multiple failed exorcisms, Pat Redding ultimately passed away from colon cancer. A tragic, haunting story related to demonic possession that is so well known that to this day, many people still shudder when it's mentioned. This is also one of the few cases involving the spiritual realm that was brought to court for trial, and it became the inspiration for the horror film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Anneliese Michel was born on the 21st of September, 1952, in a small town in Bavaria, Germany. Her entire family was devoutly Catholic, and she herself was raised to be a pious believer. Everyone around Anneliese described her as an intelligent and very likable girl, but one day in September 1968, when she was 16, she suddenly fainted, and this marked the first milestone in Anneliese's confrontation with demonic forces. That very night, she began to feel as though something was pressing down heavily on her chest, pinning her to the bed. 11 months later, in August 1969, a similar event occurred. Her mother took her to a local doctor, along with a neurologist, Dr. Luthi. These two examined Anneliese thoroughly, even conducting EEGs and brain scans, but found no problems. Thus, they both concluded it might be a form of epilepsy. Over the next 3 years, until 1972, 2 more similar incidents occurred. By this time, Anneliese was taking psychiatric medications, but they had no effect. By the spring of 1973, things became even stranger. Anneliese began to hear knocking sounds at her bedroom door, and her sisters also heard these sounds. But more terrifyingly, Anneliese also heard whispers, like curses, telling her to go to hell. Anneliese's mother even witnessed her daughter's bizarre behavior firsthand. At that time, the girl stared intensely and angrily at a statue of the Virgin Mary. Her eyes were completely black, and her hands had become elongated, like feet with sharp claws. In September 1973, during a neurological examination by Dr. Luthi, Anneliese recounted seeing grotesque, demonic faces tormenting her. She felt as if demons were living inside her and began to smell strong, foul odors around her, even though no one else could smell them. Immediately after, Anneliese's family sought out a priest, Father Alt. 2 months later, in November 1973, another doctor diagnosed Anneliese with psychosis and possibly epilepsy. Thus, she continued to receive even heavier doses of psychiatric medication. But by July 1975, her behavior became even more bizarre. She started staying up all night, muttering prayers. She would eat spiders and flies, or even lick her own urine off the floor. Worse, Anneliese destroyed rosaries, crucifixes, and even sacred statues hanging on the walls. It was said that during this period, Anneliese possessed extraordinary strength. She would toss her younger sister into the air as if she were merely a doll, and Anneliese could even crush an apple with one hand, making it burst into pieces. By late July 1975, a priest named Father Renz, also considered an exorcism expert, declared Anneliese Michel to be possessed, and after discussion with the bishop, Anneliese's exorcism was approved, to be performed by Father Renz and Father Alt on the 24th of September, 1975. The first exorcism ritual was performed. Throughout the process, Father Renz allowed some of the exorcism sessions to be recorded, and ultimately, a total of 42 recordings were preserved to this day. I'm going to let you hear one of them, and also translate it, but I warn you, it will be quite unsettling for some, so please proceed with caution. And one more thing, Anneliese's voice in the recording is not her normal voice at all. It's a voice believed to be dominated by demons. And actually, I've learned a bit about the brief biographies of those entities. For instance, Cain, according to the Bible, was the first murderer in human history. He killed his brother Abel out of jealousy. Nero was a Roman emperor who persecuted early Christians. Judas was one of Jesus' disciples who betrayed him, handing him over to Roman authorities. As for Lucifer, or Satan, he was cast out of heaven long ago and is known as the ruler of the demonic hierarchy. And we know quite a bit about Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a tyrant in human history who committed countless barbaric atrocities to achieve his ambition of world domination. Fleischmann was also one of the demons inhabiting Anneliese's body. Fleischmann was a name that, when Anneliese uttered it, struck fear into many priests. Why? Because they asserted that young Anneliese could not have known about Fleischmann's existence unless the demons within her were real. By May 1976, Anneliese's condition worsened even further. She began self-harming to the point where her family had to tie her up to prevent her from injuring herself. But most dangerously, she refused to eat, and Anneliese herself claimed she was not allowed to eat. Although Anneliese only weighed 36 kilograms, about 79 pounds at that time, she possessed incredible, superhuman strength. Her helpers had to strain themselves to restrain Anneliese's struggles. Simultaneously, she refused medical examinations despite running a high fever. On the 30th of June, 1976, another exorcism was performed, and it was also the final one. The next morning, the 1st of July, 1976, her family entered the room and found Anneliese Michel had passed away. She suffered from severe malnutrition, and the cause of death was starvation. She died at the age of 23 after 67 exorcisms. I read that she had to undergo these rituals very frequently, about twice a week, and each session lasted from 3 to 4 hours. When she passed away, Anneliese weighed only about 30 kilograms, about 66 pounds. After her passing, Anneliese's parents and the 2 priests who performed the exorcisms were charged with negligent homicide. The case went to trial in 1978. They stood trial and even used the demonic voice recordings as evidence to prove their innocence.
Wann bist du da tun?
Statt so, dass ich in dem Wald bin. Ich trag dir die Rotznase noch so lang, bis es lebt wird. Für uns geht's kein Zurück. Nie! In alle Ewigkeit!
Sag mir den Namen.
Vergiss der Judas, der Nero, der Kain und der Hitler. Fünfstimme.
Was ist der 6.? Den habt ihr dazugehört.
As I mentioned earlier, this was one of the rare trials that brought spiritual matters into a court of law. The trial lasted for some time, and the biggest question was Anneliese Michel truly possessed, or did the continuous exorcism rituals exacerbate her existing mental illness? And there's one thing that makes me particularly skeptical. There's information that Father Alt, one of the 2 priests who performed the exorcisms on Anneliese, exhibited all the symptoms of schizophrenia. Sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? A story as tangled as a ball of yarn. Ultimately, they were found guilty of negligent homicide and sentenced to 6 months in prison, which was later commuted to 3 years probation. And they also had to bear all the costs of the court proceedings. To this very day, fresh flowers frequently appear on Anneliese Michel's grave. It's said that buses from the Netherlands often stop here. The grave is also a destination for people outside of organized religion. They write messages of gratitude for her help and leave them on the grave. Afterwards, they pray and sing. That is all I've uncovered about the story of Anneliese Michel and her terrifying exorcisms. If you'd like me to cover any other topics, please leave a comment below. And if I haven't uploaded a video on your requested topic yet, please don't rush me, because I'm still researching every day. And now, goodbye, and see you in the next videos.